What would you sacrifice to stop a monster? Detective Steve Fulcher knew he had a killer in his car. He knew there was a girl missing, and the clock was ticking. But to find her, he had to break every rule in the book. A move that would catch a murderer, but cost the detective his career. Was it a heroic act of justice, or a dangerous violation of the law? Let's look at the interrogation that changed British policing forever. Every night in Swindon, taxis move through the dark streets like ghosts. Most drivers are invisible. Most are forgotten. But one man, one ordinary-looking cabbie, was hiding something that would shock an entire nation. This is the story of Christopher Halliwell, a taxi driver, a father, and, as investigators would discover, one of Britain's most terrifying killers. The 19th of March 2011, Swindon, Wiltshire. A 22-year-old office worker named Sian O'Callaghan was out with friends at Suju nightclub. At 2:52 in the morning, she left alone, planning to walk the 800 meters home to her boyfriend Kevin. She never made it. By 3:24 a.m., Kevin sent her a text. By 9:45 a.m., when she still hadn't returned, he called the police. Sian had simply vanished. Detective Superintendent Stephen Fulcher was assigned to the case. Time was critical. Every hour that passed made it less likely Sian would be found alive. Fulcher traced Sian's phone signal. It had pinged a mast near Savernake Forest, 12 miles from where she'd last been seen. CCTV footage eventually led police to a green Toyota Avensis, a local taxi, and the man behind the wheel, 47-year-old Christopher Halliwell. On the 24th of March, officers arrested him at an Asda supermarket car park in North Swindon. Halliwell had been cautioned. He had the right to remain silent. He asked for a solicitor, but Fulcher made a decision that would define the rest of his career and change everything about this case. He ordered Halliwell to be taken not to a police station, but to Barbury Castle, an ancient Iron Age hill fort on the edge of the Marlborough Downs. There, on that windswept hillside, away from legal protocols and recording equipment, Fulcher confronted Halliwell directly. He invoked emergency powers normally reserved for terrorist cases, and Halliwell broke. He told Fulcher where Sian's body was buried. That same afternoon, officers found her in a shallow grave near Uffington, Oxfordshire. But then, Halliwell said something that stopped Fulcher cold. He said there was another girl. He led police to a field in Gloucestershire. There, buried in a shallow grave, were the skeletal remains of a second young woman. She had been missing for almost a decade. The remains were identified as Becky Godden-Edwards. She was 20 years old when she disappeared in 2002. Her mother, Karen, had spent years not knowing what happened to her daughter. Now, at last, she had an answer, but the grief was unbearable. Here's where the case takes a shocking legal turn. Because Fulcher had not properly cautioned Halliwell under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, the PACE rules, Halliwell's confession was ruled inadmissible in court. The charge for Becky's murder was dropped. Halliwell pleaded guilty only to Sian's murder in 2012, receiving a 25-year minimum sentence. Fulcher faced a misconduct hearing. He was found guilty of gross misconduct. In 2014, he resigned from Wiltshire Police, his career destroyed. The man who caught a killer, who found 2 bodies, had broken the rules, and the system had broken him. But justice, slow and grinding, was not done. In 2016, after new forensic evidence came to light, Halliwell was charged again with Becky's murder. This time, the jury convicted him. He received a whole life order, meaning he will die in prison, never to be released. But the story doesn't end there. Police discovered something chilling at a pond near Ramsbury, a hidden stash. Inside were 60 items of women's clothing. Some belonged to Sian, some belonged to Becky, but others remain unidentified. Trophies from unknown victims. Investigators have now linked Halliwell to as many as 27 additional murders and disappearances across England, spanning 2 decades. Women taken from nightclubs, roadsides, and red light districts. Bodies dumped near waterways. A pattern. A predator. Christopher Halliwell sits in prison today. He has never spoken publicly about his crimes. He has never confessed to any additional victims. Families across Britain still wait for answers. And somewhere in the English countryside, the truth may still be buried. The case of Christopher Halliwell forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. How many times can a man vanish into plain sight, behind a steering wheel, behind an ordinary face, before someone notices? How many names are we still missing? If this case chilled you, share it, because awareness is the only weapon some families have left. Macabre tales.